Hello, this lesson is about rotations. We're going to learn how to rotate figures that are on the XY coordinate plane, and we're only rotating about the origin for this particular lesson. And the lesson title is called Rotations. We'll start with the definition of what a rotation is. A rotation is the process of turning a figure, which is different from a translation. It's different from a reflection. A translation, remember, is when you slide a figure, and a reflection is when you flip a figure. Let's start with an example. So we'll start with example 1. Example 1 says, graph the pre-image and image, then write a rule to describe the transformation. So I need to give you some points so that you can answer this question. So we're going to graph ABC and A prime, B prime, and C prime. A is negative 2, 5. B is negative 1, 4. C is negative 2, 3. A prime is negative 5, negative 2. B prime is negative 4, negative 1. And C prime is negative 3, negative 2. Okay, so let's graph those. Negative 2, 5 is A. Negative 1, 4 is B. Negative 2, 3 is C. And then connect the dots. And then I also have A prime, B prime, C prime. Negative 5, negative 2, A prime. Negative 4, negative 1 is B prime. Negative 3, negative 2 is C prime. Okay, so let's look at these figures. We have graphed them. We've answered the first part of the question. What looks like happened is it looks like this figure somehow got from quadrant 3, quadrant 3 to quadrant 2. Somehow it has moved over, but it has not slid over, it's actually rotated. And since this figure has rotated, bloop, it has rotated this way, okay, and it has rotated 90 degrees. So we've gone, originally I said we went from quadrant 3 to 2, but actually we went from 2 to 3. I was ignoring the prime symbols. So make sure you pay attention to the prime symbols. That indicates A, B, and C that don't have prime symbols. That shows you that it's the pre-image. A prime, B prime, C prime have prime symbols. That shows you it's the image, the after. Remember, we have a before and after picture. So we've moved, A has gone from quadrant 2 to quadrant 3. B has gone from quadrant 2 to 3. C has gone from quadrant 2 to 3. That means we've only gone one quadrant away, which is 90 degrees. And we've gone in the counterclockwise, the opposite of a clock. 90 degrees counterclockwise. The question says write a rule. Well, I don't remember the rule. Miss Braceland, that's my name. I have trouble remembering the rules for rotations. I cannot remember them, but I can figure out what they are. So I'm going to look at the points and I'm going to figure out the rule. I know I've gone 90 degrees counterclockwise. I don't remember the rule. So I'm going to compare A and A prime. It looks like the X value became the Y value. The Y value, 5, became the X value, negative 5. So this is what that looks like. Y and X have swapped places. X comma Y has become Y comma X. But one other thing has happened. X, or the Y value 5, became the X value negative 5. So the original Y value has changed signs. So I'm going to write negative Y X is my rule. They have switched spots, and the original Y value has changed signs. So this is the answer. Okay, let's go on to the next question. To determine if a rotation has occurred, look at the points. If the points have turned around, then you know a rotation has happened. If the points have flipped over, a reflection has happened. So that's something to consider when you're not just looking at rotations, but when you're trying to analyze all types of transformations at the same time. Let's look at example 2. Example 2 says, graph the pre-image and image, write a rule to describe it. Okay, so we've got A, B, C, D, and these points are -2, -2, -1, -2, -1, -3, -2, -3. And then A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime are 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, and 2, 3. Let's graph those. -2, -2 is A, -1, -2 is B, -1, -3 is C, -2, -3 is D. It looks like it's a cute little square. And then I'm going to graph 2, 2 is A prime. 1, 2 is B prime. 1, 3 is C prime. 1, 2, 3 is D prime. And again, it is a cute little square. Somehow this A, B, C, D, this square, has gone from being over here to over here. Okay? Now I'm not sure what has happened. I'm not sure if this is a reflection or if this is rotation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the points to write this rule. Sometimes, even from a teacher's perspective, it's a little bit difficult for me to tell if it's a reflection or a rotation. So I'm going to compare here. Why don't we compare B and B prime? Okay, we went from having -1, -2 is B, to B prime, which is 1, 2. So it looks like -1 became +1, -2 became +2. Okay, so the x and y values have not changed position, but they have changed signs. And to show that, I put -x, -y. This means you've changed signs. It does not mean you have made something negative. Look at this. We started out negative and we became positive. We've changed the sign of x and y. That's a good way that I think of it, as changing signs. Okay? This is actually a 180-degree rotation. So, if you were to take this figure and flip the graph upside down, you would get this figure. And that means you've got a 180-degree rotation. Or you can think of it as rotating the paper a quarter turn, followed by another quarter turn, which is the same thing as turning it upside down. So we've gone from being in quadrant 3 to being in quadrant 2 here to being in quadrant 1 here. That is a 180-degree rotation because we've moved 2 quadrants away. Let's look at a couple more examples. Okay? Here's example 3. Example 3 says, rotate the figure 270 degrees clockwise, counterclockwise. This is the same thing as rotating the figure 90 degrees clockwise. 270 counterclockwise is the same thing as 90 degrees clockwise. So I like to think of it in terms of 90 degrees because that's only a 1/4 turn. Okay, so here's the pre-image. Let's graph that. 2, 0 is J. 3, negative 2 is K. Negative 2, negative 3 is I. Okay, now I know that there is a rule for 90 degrees clockwise, but as I said earlier, I struggle to remember the rules. So if I have a piece of paper, I'm going to take a picture of this and show you what I mean. I can pretend that this is a piece of paper, such as a piece of paper that you have in front of you. I can turn it 1/4 turn 90 degrees in the clockwise direction. That means in that direction. Okay. I'm going to turn this 1/4 turn, just like this. Okay. Okay. So if I was doing this on my own paper, I would rotate the picture and then I would write down what I see. You're going to have to ignore all of the numbers, all of the positives and negatives, and look at what you see. Write it down in the corner of the paper. So I see that J is now located at 0, and you're counting down here, 1, 2. Okay, so J prime is going to be at 0, negative 2, because it's here. Now I know the numbers on here, the positives and negatives are not correct because we've turned the paper. But this is going down 2, that's negative 2. Okay, what about K? Okay, to get to K, I have to go left 2, negative 2, and down 1, 2, 3, negative 3. To get to I have to go left 1, 2, 3, and up 2. Negative 3, that's left 3, up 2 is positive 2. So once I've done that, I've turned my paper, I've jotted this down in the corner of the paper, then I can turn it back right side up. So let's do that. Now I know you're going to have some upside down numbers on your paper. This will all be upside down. And you're going to go ahead and plot this. So go back, put it right side up, put a point at 0, negative 2. Let me change colors so you can see it better. This is J prime. Okay? K prime, negative 2, negative 3. This is K prime. I prime, negative 3, positive 2. This is I prime. And you have just rotated the figure 90 degrees clockwise, which is the same as 270 counterclockwise. Okay? And if you want to check, look at this. You see how I is here? I prime is 1/4 turn away. J is here, 1 quadrant away. And K is here, and K prime is here, 1 quadrant away. That's 90 degrees. So we have answered the question correctly. Let's look at another example. Example 4 says rotate the figure 180 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this pre-image. It says negative 4, 3, negative 5, negative 2, and 0, 0. Let's connect the dots. Okay? And then I'm going to rotate 180 degrees. Again, I could certainly use the rule that I'm going to write down here in just a minute, but I don't remember it because I want to pretend that I am the average student who does not teach math all day, and the average student has difficulty remembering the rules. However, you can remember 180 degrees is 90 degrees times how many? Times 2. 90 times 2 is 180. So this is 2 quarter turns. Okay, so you're going to turn it and turn it again. Okay, or you can think of it as turning it upside down. Alright, so let me go ahead and take a picture of the screen and then I'm going to rotate it. Okay, so I have taken a picture of this. I'm going to turn it upside down. 1 quarter turn, 2 quarter turns. My paper is 100% upside down. And then I'm going to write down what I see. Remember, you need to ignore the positive and negative signs because they're in the wrong places. But do you see how T is at 0, 0? T prime, I'm going to change colors. T prime is still at 0, 0. What about U? U prime. See this U? If I go to the right, that's positive 1, 2, 3, 4. And down from the origin, 1, 2, 3. So right 4, down 3 from the origin. That's minus 3. Right 4, down 3. I have U prime. And then V prime, from the origin, I would go right 5 and up 2. Right 5 and up 2. Right is positive 5, up is positive 2. And then I would turn my paper. Now all of this is going to be written right side up and then turn my paper right side up and all of that writing is upside down. That's okay. Go ahead and graph 0, 0. Label it T prime. 4, negative 3. Label that U prime. 5, 2. Label that V prime. Connect the dots, and you've actually just rotated this 180 degrees. And you did not have to know the rotation rule to do that. By the way, the rule for rotating 180 degrees is negative x, negative y. You could memorize that if you wanted to. All it means is each of these points, you change the signs of x and y. So U was negative 4, 3. It became positive 4, negative 3. Both values switched signs. Same thing is true of V. Negative 5, negative 2 became 5, 2. That's using the rule. Either method works. So I will share these rules with you. Okay, if you want to go 90 degrees clockwise, this is the rule, y negative x. If you want to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise, the rule is negative yx, negative y comma x. If you want to rotate 270 degrees clockwise, the rule is negative yx. These are the same. 90 degrees counterclockwise and 270 clockwise are the same rule. If I want to rotate 270 degrees counterclockwise, this is the rule. Y negative x. It is the same as 90 degrees clockwise. And the very last one that I'm going to share with you, 180 degrees. Notice I'm not writing down clockwise, I'm not writing down counterclockwise, because 180 degrees, it doesn't matter which way you go. You're just turning it upside down. Okay? And I already shared this with you, but I will write it down again. change the sign of x and y. It's negative x, negative y. Okay. We have two practice examples to look at together. This will be an excellent time for you to pause the video and try this on your own. I'm going to go ahead and answer the question. Question 1 says rotate the figure 90 degrees clockwise. So I could do this two ways. I could turn my paper in the clockwise direction, 1/4 turn, or I could use the rule that I wrote up here, wrote above. Whichever is your preference. I usually prefer to turn my paper. So let's try that first. I'm going to take a picture of this and then rotate it. Okay, so I need to go in the clockwise direction, 1/4 turn. So we went from having something that looks like this to something like that. And then I can write down the locations of all of these points. Remember, you need to ignore the positives and negatives because they're not correct. C is located at -3, 1. D is 1, 2. D prime will be at 1, 2. And E prime will be located at -2, -3. And then we are going to turn this right side up again. And we will plot those points. So C prime is -3, 1. D prime is 1, 2. E prime is -2, -3. And an easy way to check, I did not draw that very nicely, is to look at each individual point. Okay, so I see C has gone from being in quadrant 3 to quadrant 2. D has gone from quadrant 2 to quadrant 1. One quadrant move here. You've moved one quadrant because you've only gone 90 degrees. 90 degrees is one quadrant. 180 degrees is 2 quadrants. And 270 degrees is 3 quadrants. The other option, I'm going to erase this. And I know I'm taking a while to explain this example, but it's helpful for a lot of students to see it the other way, which we have not discussed, which is to use the rule, y negative x. So I would write down all my points. C is -1, -3. D is located at -2, 1. E is located at 3, -2. And then I would use my rule. Change the position of x and y. So -1, -3 is now -3, -1. And then the value that was originally x, make it the opposite sign. So instead of this being -1, it's now +1. Same thing for D prime. D is -2, 1. D prime, swap those and make it 1, -2. The value that was originally x was -2. It is now +2. And then E. Switch these, make it -2, 3. The value that was originally x, the 3, is now negative. It's the opposite sign. So you would have -3, 1, 1, 2, and -2, -3. You get the same answer as if you were to turn your paper. And here is the final example. It says write a rule to describe the transformation. If you're not sure what's happened, I think that this figure has turned around because it doesn't look like it's flipped over. So I could count how many quadrants I've moved the figure. It looks like if I went in the clockwise direction, H has gone from being in quadrant 4 to being in quadrant 3 and then 2. So I have moved 2 quadrants, which is 180 degrees. If I have not memorized this rule that I'm pointing to, I could figure it out. Let's figure out this rule. Okay, so let's say I didn't memorize the rules. J is located at 3, 2. I'm going to compare some points. J prime is located at -3, -2. It looks like to get from J to J prime, the X and Y values have changed signs. So I have -X, -Y is my rule. That's the end of our lesson on rotations about the origin. Thank you so much for watching.